What's up, guys? This is Coach Grant with First Down Training, and today we're going to be breaking down a great wide receiver football IQ quiz to test your knowledge of the position. So I hope this video helps you guys out. Hope it could teach you a few new things, but also, fellas, if you are a wide receiver and would like 200 plus wide receiver route running, press release, and catching drills that you guys can do, check out that very first link in the description below for our 8-week wide receiver on-field workout plan. It's a daily training schedule. We give you the exact sets and reps to do for each drill, and it's over 200 plus drills to add to your weekly routine. So check out that very first link in the description below if you're interested in that, fellas. Let's get started with this video. So now, first situation here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be showing, if you're not familiar with our quiz style format videos, I'm going to show you guys a pre-snap look. I'm going to ask you a series of questions about that pre-snap look, how you would run a route versus a specific coverage, etc. Give you a chance to pause the video, think about your answer, and then we'll break things down. Okay, so this first one, how would you guys run a 3-step slant versus a DB who's inside shade coverage and he's maybe about 2 yards away? So inside shade, 2 to 3 yards off, how would you run a 3-step slant? So you guys can go ahead and pause the video and think about your answer. So pause the video. All right, let's break this thing down. So the key answer to this is not the fact that he's inside shade, not the fact that he's pressed, but it is the distance between us and the DB, right? So when you come up to the line of scrimmage as a wide receiver, we're looking for 2 specific things with this DB. We are looking for his leverage, and then we are looking for the distance, because that is how I dictate my plan of action. That's how I pick my release. That's how I pick how I'm going to run the route. So if you have inside shade press and he's right up on the line of scrimmage, you would do something called a diamond release, right? If you had to run a slant. A diamond release is where you take 3-yard steps. So you would go left, right, and then left, right at this DB's outside shoulder, outside hip, and the goal is to get him to flip to a fade. Now, that's exactly how you would run it in this case, but the only thing that's different is that you would close the distance first, right? And I'm going to explain to you why. So you see how Ridley comes off the ball, closes the space, then he gives him the diamond release. Then he attacks the DB's outside shoulder. If that's what you guys said, that would be correct. If you said just straight up diamond release, that would be wrong. We have to close the distance first. Reason why is because if you come off the ball and you go do that diamond release, but there's this big gap of space, yeah, let's say maybe the DB bit on it, but if there's still this gap when you're trying to slip under him, that DB could speed turn, beat you to the angle. He might open up his hips, beat you to the angle. We have to close the distance. We have to make sure when I'm doing this diamond release, I am hip to hip with this DB. So that's exactly what Ridley does. He closes the space, then he attacks the outside shoulder, so it's easier for him to slip underneath and get separation on that slant. So if you guys said close the space, then diamond release, that would be 100% correct. Okay, so now I want you guys to think about this. Quarterback is to this receiver's left, so where I'm drawing these arrows and where I drove this circle. So don't get confused by his feet, his stance switch, okay? Don't get confused by that. So how would you guys run a 10 to 12 yard dig? So a 10 to 12 yard dig versus outside shade press, and here's the tricky part, you're not able to stack. So you're not able to restack over the top of him. How would you guys run this 10 to 12 yard dig if you couldn't restack, but he's against outside shade press? So you guys go ahead and pause the video and think about your answer. So pause the video. All right, let's break this thing down. So now, you got to think about, again, pre-snap process. What are we looking for at the line of scrimmage when I come up to the line of scrimmage? 2 things, remember, right? We're looking for leverage, and then we're looking for distance. So this DB has outside leverage, maybe a yard, half a yard away from me, but he's outside leverage, and I have to run an inside breaking route. So that's how I come up with my plan. I have a dig. He's outside shade press. My goal is I am going to attack him to the outside, maybe try to get him to hold that leverage and take the inside release. Now, remember, our goal every time we're against press coverage is to obviously stack the DB, but if I can't stack him, which is the situation we're working, I still got to have a plan of action to get that separation at the break. So let's watch what this receiver does. He attacks him, takes the inside release, and he gives that lean. I call it like a chicken wing technique. So that's pretty much essentially on your stem. You don't just try to run away from the DB. You get into him. You use your shoulder. You use your hip. You put your body weight into him. So at that break point, you could get away with pushing off a little bit without actually pushing off. You're leaning into him. Your body is pushing off. The cut is allowing you to get that little extra bit of separation rather than you pushing off with your hand and getting a flag thrown. So that's what you would do, fellas. If you have a route away from the leverage, remember, away from the leverage, you would lean into him. So if you're running a dig versus outside shade and he's right on your hip, let's lean into him, then break. You don't want to just take off and go run and have that DBB right on your hip, because when he's outside leverage, usually what does he have to the inside? he has some kind of help, right? That's the only reason he's playing outside leverage. So if you're running this dig and he has help right here and he's right on your hip, that's not the biggest window for the QB. But if you lean into him and you get a little bit of separation, you break, and the safety's here, that's a little bit bigger of a window for that quarterback. So you have to make sure that we can do that. We have to make sure that we lean into him, create that space, and then break this thing right off. Okay, so now, next example here, quarterback is over to this way, exactly where I drew this circle and gave this X. So what I want to ask you guys is, it's kind of a two-part question. Number one, how would you guys run a 10-yard out versus this specific coverage? How would you run a 10-yard out versus this coverage? And then I want to ask you guys, why do you think a wide receiver switches his stance like this? Okay, so why does a wide receiver switch his stance, and how would you run a 10-yard out versus this specific coverage? Okay, so you guys go ahead and pause the video and think about your answers. So pause the video. All right, let's break this thing down. So obviously what we got here is we got this inside shade press coverage look. We got maybe about a yard of space, half of yard, and we have to run a 10 to 12 yard out. So if you guys said we're going to attack him inside, take the outside release and work to stack, that would be correct. Or if you said attack him inside, take the outside release and lean into him, like the last example, that would also be correct. Because remember, think about it. When we have a route that is away from the leverage, if it's press, right? If I have an out route, if I have a corner route, if I have a comeback route, maybe not a comeback, but let's say I got a fade route that's away from the leverage, I want to lean into him. I want to use my body to get separation. You see how he leans? He gets away with a little bit of a push because it's his body pushing him off. It's not just his arm. He's not pushing him in the back. He's not reaching and extending. He is leaning into him with his body. That is what it takes to get space. Okay, so that's the first thing. Now, second part of the question was, why would a wide receiver ever switch his stance? So there's two reasons, I would say. Number one, it's for timing. Okay, so now this is honestly like, I personally don't like this one for timing purposes just because I feel like it can throw off, or a defense can easily read it, right? Like I've been in some offenses, or not in some offenses, but trained some players that have been in some offenses where they will switch their feet when strictly running routes like a two-step slant. Right? So like, let's say, for example, your inside foot is up. So his left foot is up, his right foot is back. If you're running a slant, it would just be a one-step slant and you'd go, or 3 steps, right? But if you switch your feet like this, your first step is with your left foot, and then you break off the right foot. That's a 2-step slant. So it kind of pushes you a little bit deeper. It gets the timing a little bit different for the quarterback. He has more time to get a read on somebody who's lined up over the top of you. Like if it were a double slant concept, he has more time to read this like linebacker over the top of you. So I get that. That's one of the reasons for timing. But also it's for you to throw off this DB with your release. Because watch this release that this wide receiver does. You see how he gives this like little jab step with his back foot, right? He would not be able to do that if his inside foot was up. If this left foot was up on the ball, he would not be able to do this release. It's a way for us to attack him. It's probably a more comfortable release for him, and it can throw off this DB because of that stance switch. It's an easier way to work releases that you're probably more comfortable with. So those are the two reasons why. I don't necessarily expect all of you to know that because we haven't gone over it a whole lot, but that's the main reason about the stance switch. So a lot of coaches don't even teach that because they would rather have the inside foot up the whole time. Personally, that's what I teach too. I'm okay with receivers switching their feet if it's for a reason. Don't just switch your feet and not know the reason for it. Switch your feet because you're trying to work a release that you're comfortable with, like a wide step, a certain crossover, whatever it might be. All right, fellas, I really want to thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. If you have any questions at all, don't hesitate to leave those in the comment section below. Again, if you would like an 8-week wide receiver on-field workout schedule that you can do, check out that very first link in the description below. We'd love to get you guys on that. I'll see you guys next time.